Your Royal Highness, Princess Laurentien of the Netherlands, Excellencies, representatives of the Carnegie institutions worldwide, representatives of international organizations, philanthropists, representatives of corporations with a social ideal, representatives of non-governmental organizations, academics, students, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. I wish you all a warm welcome to the Peace Palace. Welcome to this global icon of peace and justice, and welcome indeed to the first ever Carnegie Peace Building Conversations. This is a historical place full of ideals, historic achievements and results, a place with a mission. At the end of the 19th century, the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, initiated an international peace conference with the aim of stopping an ongoing series of wars on this continent, especially between the great powers of the time. Now, we don't know whether he was an idealist, he wanted world peace, or if he was a realist who decided that it wasn't too good for the economy to have this continuing warfare. But he realized that he needed a neutral venue for peace talks, and he approached the young Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands to host the conference, as the Russian court of the Romanovs and the Dutch royal household of the House of Oranje were connected through the marriage of Anna Paulowna. As she should, Queen Wilhelmina informed the Dutch government, and as the Netherlands had a policy of neutrality at the time, it was agreed to serve as host for this peace conference indeed. The first Hague Peace Conference was held in 1899 here in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Out of the many results of this conference, for the history of the Peace Palace, or rather for the world, there was one crucial decision following the basic notion during the entire conference: peace through law. Humanity would be saved from warfare, loss of life and goods, if battles were no longer fought on the battlefield, but in the courtroom. If arbiters were to decide on an issue on the basis of international law, war should be prevented. So it was decided to set up a permanent court of arbitration that prevents political conflicts from becoming violent by the application of international law. To host this new court, a new building would be built that should be a symbol of world peace and an office to the court. This, of course, became the Peace Palace. To be able to build this palace, however, that was not budgeted for by the Dutch government, Queen Wilhelmina wrote a letter to Andrew Carnegie, or, as I learned, Andrew Carnegie. As a child of a poor Scottish working family that migrated from humble circumstances in Dunfermline to family in Pittsburgh in the United States of America, he managed to fulfill the American dream. He became an incredibly successful businessman, and after selling his company to JP Morgan, he was the richest man of the world. Andrew Carnegie wanted to invest his fortune for the good of society. As he famously wrote, he believed that the man who dies rich dies disgraced. He concluded that it's better to spend your fortune for society, and decided that he would support education, science, libraries, heroism, and eventually world peace. Hence, indeed, the Scottish Tide was proud of this legacy. Andrew Carnegie responded favorably to the call from the Dutch Queen and donated $1.5 million for building the Peace Palace. At the time, that was a huge amount that was enough to build a building like this. Now, unfortunately, that was in our day and age, that amount does not suffice to maintain it anymore, but I'll not bore you with all of my problems. At least not yet, although you may realize that throughout the history, serving a public goal, world peace, has required private support from the onset. That is still true today. To bring peace, we need broad support, including private support. In addition to funding from the Dutch government, secured by Carnegie at the origin. To manage his donation, he founded the Carnegie Foundation in 1903. The Peace Palace opened its doors in 1913, a day that Carnegie described as the happiest day of his life. Today, the Carnegie Foundation still owns and manages the Peace Palace, a palace that was built to prevent conflicts and to promote world peace, and that is what we do. On a daily basis, conflicts are resolved in this Peace Palace that has the grandeur to bring together leaders at the highest level and lawyers in a building that makes you feel impressed when you come in by its style, its art, its history and its mission, thus providing the inspiration for soul-searching, eventually leading to better solutions. Next to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, established during the peace conferences, since the establishment of the United Nations, the Peace Palace also houses the International Court of Justice. This court is the main judicial organ of the UN, making the Peace Palace the only building outside of New York that is hosting a principal organ of the United Nations mentioned in the UN Charter. I will name a few of the cases that were recently brought to the court. Iran versus the United States on sanctions imposed following disagreement on developing nuclear power. Just took place 2 weeks ago. Russia versus Ukraine on financing terrorism. And India versus Pakistan on a matter of life and death. This will give you some impression of the impact of this World Court and what takes place here at the Peace Palace. The other court, the Permanent Court, has even more cases in its docket, albeit mainly through confidential arbitrations, without the world knowing all of it. So many conflicts are settled peacefully here. It's really peace in action. So the Peace Palace is a place of hope. And serving these courts to settle these important conflicts peacefully is our first and foremost responsibility as Carnegie Foundation, always. But we do more. On strict instructions of Andrew Carnegie himself, the Carnegie Foundation also runs the Peace Palace Library. A library that probably has the largest collection on international law in the world, with some million publications, nearly 15 miles of books. The library serves the two courts in the palace, but also the other international courts and tribunals based here in The Hague, known as the legal capital of the world. Every day, students of international law and politics come to the Peace Palace Library to do research. Thanks to our digitalized offer, the library can serve practitioners and academics throughout the world now. Since 1923, at the initiative of both the one and only Dutch Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Mr. Tobias Asser, who was so active in these peace talks, and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace based in Washington, the Peace Palace also hosts the renowned The Hague Academy of International Law, that welcomes hundreds of students from all over the globe every year to be educated in international law, both public law and private law at the highest level. But the Carnegie Foundation that manages the Peace Palace is just one of the many institutions Andrew Carnegie founded. We consider ourselves lucky today that we cooperate with institutions like, indeed, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I just mentioned the Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and many more, a family of institutions working to fulfill the same legacy, promoting the same ideal. Andrew Carnegie had a dream. In his deed, he stated clearly that this palace should serve as a temple of peace for the world. That is the mission we carry forward today. You can imagine, perhaps, that it was unbelievable to start working here at the Peace Palace 3 years ago. My dad, a teacher, taught me to try and to do good for those who need it most. So what a privilege it is to be working to promote world peace, trying to help people in need, trying to prevent war from happening. And what a responsibility, I then realized. So the question was how to turn dreams into action, how to move from ideals to an agenda. Wasn't that what our founding father and entrepreneur Andrew Carnegie would want? I was heavily impressed when I learned in New York what all the Carnegie institutions undertake. I mentioned him, the godfather, this afternoon during the luncheon with the Carnegie institutions of the Carnegie family. The president of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, Martin Gregorian, asked me during a luncheon to share my challenges when I first joined the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy ceremonies he initiated. Well, I had just taken office and I was asked to do so on the spot after the Carnegie Institute of Science and I believe Carnegie Mellon University just gave impressive presentations about their research and societal impact from here to other planets. Realizing this impact, I spontaneously suggested a joint Carnegie Peace Agenda. Vartan then invited me and the man who so kindly connected me to all the family members, Angus Hogg from the Carnegie Trust in Dunfermline, Scotland, to work this out. When challenged on the spot in New York, I shared that we have two institutional challenges ahead of us. I'll not bore you with the management of this palace, which, as you'll understand, is challenging enough, how to take the palace into the next century. So I will focus on the second, the need for more outreach. This palace and the many conflicts that have been resolved here peacefully is not nearly known enough. It is in the field of international law, but not enough throughout the world. And in a time when people look at news flashes on their mobiles with sometimes feelings of despair, we provide hope. The peaceful way to solve conflicts is available here, and it works. Settling conflicts peacefully, we do indeed have the opportunity to inspire the world, thanks to all those working here. Therefore, I'm grateful that we're also live streaming this event now, so we are not alone here in this auditorium. We can share our ideas during our conversations, our solutions, and our hope with a much wider audience than before. We live in a time when tensions are rising again, 100 years after we commemorate the end of World War I, when we said, never again. Some say we are sleepwalking into another time of warfare once more. So managing this one and only Peace Palace of the world, we aim to use the convening power of the palace to serve as a temple of peace indeed. Thanks to the support of the Carnegie institutions, thanks to the support from Bart and his team, from Angus and his team, we bring people from different backgrounds together for dialogues on root causes of conflict now. We are going to facilitate the exchange of the needs of people affected by conflicts, youth and their ideas, with stakeholders, philanthropists that aim to do good in the spirit of Andrew Carnegie. These dialogues aim to find common ground and to deliver results. So here we are today in the auditorium my predecessor Stephen built for the Hague Academy. Now we take it further. We launch the Peace Palace Dialogues from this auditorium, another Carnegie Hall. And I'm extremely grateful for the support we got. The family of Carnegie institutions has worked together hard to organize these first ever Carnegie Peace Building Conversations. We host dialogues, as peace requires understanding of interests and needs in order to find sustainable solutions to issues that become ever more complex. For 3 days, hundreds of people will engage on different issues, striving for better understanding of each other and of their problems, possible new forms of cooperation, and in the end, towards a more peaceful world. The program is dense and broad at the same time. We will discuss scarcity of natural resources as a source of conflict, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence and the future of warfare, health, geopolitics, pathways for peace and how to make peace profitable in order to be sustainable, and eventually financing of peace. And of course, we will also discuss the current challenges in promoting peace through law. We do believe in the rule of law. As Andrew Carnegie said it, peace wins her way not by force. Her appeal is to the reason and the conscience of man. We do realize that these dialogues need to be continued, sustained. And I'm grateful that the Major Alliance has arranged experienced and knowledgeable reporters who will lay down the outcomes of our conversations. Through generative listening, the dialogues will be taken to meaningful outcomes. We do not come together to produce hot air. We do not come together for a one-off. With partners, we will continue the dialogues per topic. The Carnegie Foundation cannot do this alone. We are grateful that we organize this conference together with and with the crucial support of the Carnegie institutions I mentioned. The Carnegie, in addition, the Carnegie Trust for the University of Scotland, the Carnegie UK Trusts, and with other partners like the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation, the Major Alliance, the Missing Chapter Foundation, the Youth Peace Initiative and UNOI, the Institute for Peace and Economics, Johnson & Johnson, Europol, Armistice Suisse, the US Embassy in The Hague, Reed Smith Law Firm and the Municipality of The Hague, and last but not least, the Organization of American States and the World Bank. May I please have your warm applause for our partners. I sincerely thank them, as well as the colleagues that worked around the clock to make this launch happen. Thank you so much. Today, the focus of the conference will be on the legacy of Andrew Carnegie and its relevance in contemporary peace building. Next year, it will be a century ago that Andrew Carnegie passed away. So we need to look forward to the next 100 years. How should the Carnegie institutions that contributed so much to the world develop in order to meet the changing dynamics of conflict and peace? How do we forge the future? When we are addressing the root cause of conflicts in the next 3 days and beyond, in the Peace Palace that is so closely linked to the United Nations, we are mindful of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. These goals provide an excellent framework for dialogues on the future of our world. Especially groundbreaking in the SDGs is that a specific goal, after long negotiations, was set up to promote peace, justice and strong institutions, Goal 16. Almost exactly a year ago, in September 2017, our chairman, Dr. Bernard Bot, signed the SDG Charter of the Netherlands on behalf of the Carnegie Foundation Peace Palace. Doing so, the organization has committed itself to promoting progress on these goals. While recognizing the importance of all 17 goals, the commitment of the Carnegie Foundation is to link this particular SDG 16, peace, justice and strong institutions, with the other goals. Poverty, hunger, education, inequality, water, climate. These root causes for potential conflicts will be addressed. And we are happy that we are already playing a role on Goal 16, building partnerships to reach the SDGs. I'm glad to announce that today we will be taking another step in our commitment to the SDGs. Today, the Peace Palace will be branded as International SDG 16 House, the ultimate location for dialogues and events on the promotion of the SDGs, integrating this Goal 16, peace, justice and stronger institutions with the other goals. To make this official, I would hereby kindly like to invite on stage Mr. Hugo van Meijeveld, the coordinator of the Sustainable Development Goals for the Netherlands, and our chairman, Dr. Bernard Bot.